Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here with Vig. Vig, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everyone. What is it like to be you?
Um, well, for a long time it was confusing. Um, you don't it really is being almost uh, colorblind in a world of just surrounded by people who are describing and obviously experiencing such levels of vividness of experience. And when you're young, like I was, it's alienating a bit and it's very confusing, especially when you're more mentally oriented in or analytical than you are emotional, I suppose. And so there was a lot of confusion, and as I got older, read a lot of stuff, figured more or less what might not be the issue. It became more easy to navigate my way around. I'm better at least effectively displaying, if not experiencing. I'm better at fitting in, at least visually, as representationally, acting out. Performance is wasn't there before, but I can perform now, so I blend in pretty good.
Okay. What was the secret sauce to the blending in better? Like what was the thing that
TV and movies.
Okay.
TV and movies. They show you just, I mean, that when you're a latchkey kid like I was, and you watch a lot, and yeah, I think also uh, being a bit of a bookworm when I was growing up as well, that allows you to have when you read a book, I mean, you basically have insight into motivations and how other people work, so that helps a lot.
Yeah, I remember being a bookworm too. I don't I don't know why. It's funny too because now it's been like a decade since I've read a book, but like during that time period I was just so enamored with books, but I don't really remember them reading them to be kind of like, okay, I'm learning to mask. Is that how you read them, or that's just, you also learned to
That's just
mask?
that's just a byproduct
I
that
see.
benefit that came from it.
Hmm.
And for example, like now, I just realized that if I don't really read that much women authors, and if I want to understand women, I should read their books, their fiction.
Yeah.
And it's not a prejudicial thing. It's not really what I've never read much by women. So if I want to understand women more, I figure I should really get into their books.
That's so true. I've been thinking recently about this idea of understanding different perspectives for various reasons. One of them is I'm watching this TV show, Wheel of Time, based on the Robert Jordan fantasy series. I think there's like 14 books in these fantasy series.
Rosamund Pike, Gone Girl, Stan. I am an Amy Dunn Stan.
Okay. So I think Gone Girl too was one of the last books I read, and it was because my sister was like, "No, you're really gonna like this one," and was really engrossing. Yeah, but the Wheel of Time world is interesting because for various reasons, like I don't want to spoil whatever or something, but for various reasons, you basically just have a reversal of gender roles in that world versus this world. And it's not kind of like this is like the main focus. It's not at all that. It's for, I guess like really good, important plot reasons that this has just happened this way. And so you have a character in there that's called the daughter heir. And so I asked, I'm not reading the books, but my girlfriend is. So I asked her, what's up with the daughter heir? And she has a brother. Is the brother older? And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, why can't the brother be the heir? Oh, heir to a throne. I guess she's the daughter of the queen or something of this area. And she's like, it's because he's a boy. He can't be. And I'm like, that seems so crazy that the oldest baby can't be the king or something of this because he's a boy. But you it's almost like you can only see your real world when you see it kinda inverted that way, and I had a, friend who kind of works a little bit in entertainment is probably just the best generic way to put it, and he saw and I think I mentioned this in another video, the Tar movie video. He saw Tar and he kinda said that it was cheating because basically it seemed like as if to him, the writers just wrote a male character and then just cast it with Kate Blanchett, the the female actress, and so he was like, "Yeah,
Sometimes
that's
it works.
cheating." Yeah, and I'm like, "Is it though?" Because I did not find her to be unbelievable at all. In fact, there were, like, many, reasons why I identified with her. I think it's also interesting, I've done this too with people, like, it's really hard for me to tell people's gender when they reach out to me about doing, like, a Zoom like this one, and, I don't usually care because I'm like, whatever gender they are is however they present is probably not really how they are anyways. Like, the way, like, a normal chicken person would be or something, where it's like their gender is, like, really core to their identity or whatever. And so it kinda doesn't matter, like, that much in the psychopath world, but to it would be good, I think, for me to understand a little bit better about how normal people view gender, because I do think that I have, like, a hard time understanding even, like, issues regarding gender, like transgender, difficulties that they experience, like, what would it be like to be have gender dysphoria. It's really hard for me to understand because I'm not attached to my body or my gender or see them as really like key aspects of my identity. And so it's like a little bit it's like too hard for me to imagine a little bit. It's like I struggle. I that's like a good way to put it. I struggle trying to think, okay, what is it like to be to care about something like gender in that way is foreign to me and yeah, I guess that's one reason why I probably liked literature though is like yeah, you can kind of understand, you can get some insight like okay, this is why people think this way or do these things because I guess that's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to be like, why do I do these things and why do other people do these things? And if you can just get some insight into their mind, then you can understand a little bit better their nature and hopefully also your own nature. And I guess that's why I like the kind of the Wheel of Time series to watch it on the TV. It's on Amazon Prime. Is that in kind of like or that movie Tart, in trying to set up these gender roles in different ways, I see that I have like these biases where I'm like, hold it, what? The oldest son cannot be, that seems whatever. And I don't have those same kind of like outrage reactions uh to things like historically like oldest daughters not becoming the whatever royalty figure, the queen or whatever. I don't know.
Heirs,
Yeah, the heirs. Yeah.
Duchess.
Uh-huh. Whatever it is. But sometimes they did too, so I don't know. But it is interesting to just kinda think about, people's motivations. I guess that's why people watch these videos to the extent that there's anybody watching them.
We'll give them a boost.
Yeah.
Our energy, our chemistry will bring the numbers, the eyeballs. The algorithms will work in our favor because we're a dynamic duo. As you see by
There
my
you
mask.
go.
You
Uh-huh.
wore a mask too. We'd be a dynamic duo.
Yeah, I have a mask on the cover of my book. But that's what so
Oh,
I have
by the
been
way,
thinking of
I
go ahead.
I just want to say that I did have the audiobook. I just want you to know that I put money in your pockets. You're welcome.
Oh, I do not I do not have a need to have money right now, so but
Well, I just want
I
you to know that I
appreciate
got
the
yeah.
sentiment. Yeah.
It would have been nice to hear you read it, but the lady did
Uh,
an adequate job.
yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard that she did a good job. So good for her.
But what we were saying, I don't, I've never
Yeah.
felt any affiliation with other males or the women. I just felt it was my own thing, really. I mean, even here you see he, it. and I never felt I never there were just two camps that I didn't feel a part in. I mean, obviously I'm straight, but still the masculine displays was not something that was built into me.
It's funny how you say it, "Obviously, I'm straight."
Well, obviously I'm sure not obviously I'm sure. I've been hit on by enough gay men where it's probably an open question even with me. I don't know.
Hmm,
But where I trend, I'm currently straight, yes.
yeah. That's another thing that's interesting in this show a little bit is like the sexuality. Like somebody kind of mentions to like one of the main characters something like, "Oh, I didn't know if you two were romantically together," and him and his male friend, and he doesn't get offended by it. He's not like, "Oh, what?" You know, like this is outrageous to think that that you would think that we're together or whatever. It's just like a different world in which things like that just never popped up, nobody ever decided to make that a thing and then kind of teach their babies to make it a thing and et cetera, until we get to where we are.
Yeah, but tribes somehow in the middle of nowhere, they know where they think they belong, or there's
Yeah.
something animalistic that gets activated and being aggressive.
I've been thinking about this idea about belonging a little bit because I've been thinking about the idea of masking, and, psychopaths aren't the only ones that mask. There are lots of people who mask. Traditionally, there have been people who have been kind of, uh, you know, of minority classification that was sort of limiting to them, and then they passed as the other thing, right? Whether it's like race, you're passing as mostly white, I guess, but probably different passing too, depending on where you're from. Like the white thing would be kind of a Western. Like maybe if
It's
you're
a
Southeast
yeah.
Asian, you're passing as East Asian, or whatever, uh, to be like less Western centric about things, or female passing as male, or male passing as female, depending on what what was kind of like one of my favorite movies with Barbara Streisand is Yentl, I think is the name of the movie, where she
Yeah,
passes as a
that's it.
man. Yeah, exactly. Just so she can study the Torah. And so there are lots of reasons why people mask, and it's often to kind of get access or the ability that you wouldn't normally have. And I do think that that seems to be like why psychopaths mask. You know, definitely that's one of the motivations. But then I was reading about other people that mask, including, I guess it's really common for more common than men for women, autistic women to be diagnosed later in life. Like, I think I read that the average is they get a diagnosis, like, on average 6 years later than the average, autistic man does. And people have, like, no real no real explanation for it, just guesses, just theories about why that might be. But one of them was that women autistic women tend to mask more. They have like better social skills than the autistic men do, and so they're able to pass better. Uh, there's some other interesting ones too, including that autistic women tend to have more. They they tend to experience at least one comorbidity. So they have, maybe anxiety and autism spectrum disorder, or they have something else, an autism spectrum disorder. And they have kind of like people suspect that there's like a tendency to kind of like misread some of their autistic characteristics and kind of just like typical like demure, like shy or bookish or whatever, like
Right.
women ways.
Coquettish,
Yeah, whereas you would expect, like traditional boys, I guess, to, like be out there like stabbing each other with wooden swords or something. And so, but it was interesting to think these autistic women, are they masking intentionally or are they masking kind of unintentionally? And it's made me think too, especially because like, I've talked about this before, I think with, I forget what was the name, the pseudonym of this PhD student, that I've talked to before, but she, and I talked about, like some parallels, some overlap between autism spectrum disorder and especially, I guess, kind of like the personality disorder that's antisocial personality disorder or psychopathy. Some common things like some difficulties with empathy, some difficulties with, understanding the minds of others or kind of being socialized in these particular ways. Some social kind of awkwardness, even if like psychopaths can be charming, they can also be off-putting, really off-putting to people. And they just don't seem like programmable, like you can't socialize them the same way that you can socialize other types of people. They can be obsessive compulsive kind of thinking, get obsessive or have compulsive thoughts about particular things, tend to kind of go that way, get obsessed with interests, some different kind of similarities. And my own therapist, who has passed away, is when I first started seeing him, and we just saw each other for like, I don't know, it was like 2 months or something, 2 or 3 months before he kind of like gave like his assessment kind of what he thought in terms of like my diagnoses. And then he said, when we talked, he was like, you kind of have like a three-legged stool going on. On the one hand, there's the antisocial personality disorder. On the other hand, he said there's Asperger's. Now, this was almost like a decade ago. So this was before Asperger's got reintegrated into autism spectrum disorders. And then he said you have some obsessive compulsive personality disorder as well. So you have this kind of like wobbly, I guess, a slightly wobbly three-legged stool. And I never kind of thought anything about the Asperger's thing until recently when I've been thinking about, like, am I masking more than I even realize, because my impression is that autism spectrum disorder women, when they mask, it's not like they're thinking, okay, I'm getting like some benefit from this. It's not like they're going undercover, as a whatever, as a man, like, yeah, like Yentl was, they're not kind of like intentionally thinking I'm going to do this in order to get this benefit, in order to appear normal, the way that a psychopath tends to do. And I definitely am aware of some of my masking as a psychopath where I have done that. I'm like a Yentl about it, where I'm like, no, I want to kind of have this situation go smoothly or get this opportunity. So I will behave this way. I will be kind of like charming and, a little bit manipulative in these particular ways in this masking in order to give the illusion of this so I can, like just facilitate this outcome that I'm trying to do. Does that make sense?
Well, that
Am I clear about this? So I guess I understand my own masking, the psychopath masking,
so
but I'm asking myself, do I have some autistic masking there too that I'm not even aware of?
sometimes it's masking in that it's intentional, and then sometimes you're just, in my case, you're a reflexive mimic machine
Mhm.
about what you're supposed to display.
Yeah.
You know, my um oh my dog just died. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And you just do it automatically even though there's nothing behind it. So there's a lot of that too. Um I go back and forth. Mostly now it's just reflex, but you can put it on if you do want to get a little something more out of it, or if there's an advantage, or if you feel that need.
Yeah. That's a good way to kind of describe it. Uh, and I wonder if people have different experiences, people who are like, watching this, listening to this or whatever, because, I learned that babies reflexively flirt with adults.
That's weird.
Yeah, they like if you make eye contact and they smile at you, has that ever happened to you? Make eye
That
contact with a
that's how,
baby?
yeah, that yeah, and they get the breast. That's yeah, so it works.
Yeah, it works for them. Well, I read too that it's not just for their mom, it'll be for strangers too. They don't even get stranger danger kind of reflexes until like they're almost 1. And it's partly they think because if the parents did leave them behind, so you imagine like these hunter-gatherer clans, like once you have 2 babies, then each parent is holding a baby, right? And if you have 3 babies, then that 3rd baby is in like severe risk of being left behind, like, well, we don't actually have the arms to hold this 3rd baby, and so see you later, baby. That was kind of the idea, and so the babies have, been evolutionarily selected is the theory to flirt with adults because if some baby's making eye contact with a stranger and like smiling like hey then maybe the stranger's like I guess I can take this baby. And so it provides them like a fail safe if their parents like leave them behind they can maybe get picked up by a stranger. But sometimes, and I often think this with tickling too, you tickle a baby, is the baby enjoying it or are they not enjoying it? Like, forced to laugh or whatever until sometimes it looks like it hurts or whatever. And I think that there's something a little bit about that too, to the masking. Yeah, this reflexive masking. The reflexive masking is like a good word for it, actually, in my opinion.
I give you permission to put that in a sequel to your next book without paying me.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hmm.
So, is that something that you're considering working on a sort of follow-up?
Yeah, I am working on a follow-up and there are a couple things that, I'll just kind of give you I'll try to make it quick. I know I've been kind of like a little bit wandering with my thoughts this morning. I had insomnia, that's why. And so my brain's all like loose and jangly, all up in there. It's not like normally I have a hard time anyways with linear thought. And then this morning it's like, it's just not going to happen. But also, I like to have my brain be this way sometimes too. It helps me to think new thoughts, different thoughts sometimes. But like, yeah, the new book. So I first started off kind of being like, oh, to just meet all these psychopaths. And then the book proposal was one of vignettes. It's basically one chapter on this person, one chapter on this other person, different portraits of psychopaths. And then kind of the feedback I got from publishers was that that was too similar to the first book. That if anything, it would just drive sales to from like promoting the second book would just drive sales to the first book, the original book. So then I started kind of doing like some slightly different things, keeping the vignette idea or whatever. And people kind of I was like, okay, maybe I can be like, these vignettes illustrate like a broader pattern, like they're kind of stages that psychopaths go in. And I still think that this is true. Like the probably the most common stage that everybody seems to experience is the playground stage, where everything's easy and crazy and fun, and you're kind of at the peak of your kind of like psychopathic behaviors, and which usually happens, I think, in people's 20s, essentially late teens, and can go into like the early 30s, and maybe even a little bit later, depending on their circumstances and their willingness to, I don't know, live differently if they wanted to live differently. So people didn't really like that book proposal either. They were like, there's not enough like hard data. It's purely anecdotal, which as somebody who has studied statistics, I understand. And so I started thinking, well, do I want to write a follow-up book? And if so, what would I want to write about? And I thought, well, I should just write about things that have really helped me. If people are, getting out of the playground stage and they're entering what I call the reckoning. Like, is there any way out of the reckoning? Because it can be so dark in that stage, that it seems like there's not that much kind of help for people. And so then I wrote kind of this book proposal. And I think that like was good. And I think maybe it was like a little bit too narrow of a focus for people. And so I thought, well, I'm not really writing specifically for psychopaths, some of the stuff that I'm writing about, because the main kind of idea with the thing that really helped me, and this is actually like of religious significance too, is like this idea of the feedback loop, like applying an empiricist's eye to your own self. Because it's like, as I kind of have mentioned before, like I'll become aware of things that I'm not aware of, like I'll become, for instance, I'm recently aware of the fact that maybe I'm doing autistic masking, that I'm not aware of because the psychopath masking has more awareness to it than the autistic masking seems to have. And so just thinking, like, okay, now that I have had this idea, I can observe myself and I can observe the way that I interact with people and ask questions and kind of gather information. And this idea of like starting from square one about understanding yourself and having, a strong sense of self and prioritizing yourself. I guess like if I had to put it into like a sentence, the book, the next book that I am like, currently working on the proposal is trying to teach people how to be all of them all of the time. And not kind of adapting to, not being overly socialized or not kind of just going with the flow or just mindlessly reflexively masking or whatever else it is, not just kind of allowing your reflexes, your instincts to kind of drive what it is that you have, because life is too short to just live like this creaturely life. Like it's totally great to be creaturely sometimes, to like, you know eat a beef rib or whatever, tearing at it with your teeth, and there's so many other things that are great about being creaturely, but I think that there are other things that, um, if we were only creaturely, that's not as full of a life as it could be or whatever. So, in thinking about, like, one of the comments I got back recently was about the audience, and it was like, well, who is the audience for this book? And I thought, well, it's definitely not just psychopaths. It's not even just people with personality disorders who have kind of an issue with self. Really, it's kind of anybody who, has sacrificed their self and their self-expression and their identity and in order to kind of get along, like, and so that definitely includes people that mask, like all people that mask. That's kind of why I've been thinking about it. And I have been hearing recently about these like late in life people, late in life diagnoses. Like one of these is my friend, actually the person loosely affiliated with Hollywood who got late in life diagnosed with ADHD, right? And then he's trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean for me? Like, and looking at the past history of all of his behaviors of like, what was me and what was the ADHD? I think is like an interesting kind of question that everybody probably who gets kind of a late in life diagnosis or even an early in life diagnosis has to kind of understand and come to understand. So by using this like kind of empirical method, the feedback loop or whatever, I hope to help people to learn for themselves, what are some of their core identity characteristics, like what, and the reason why it's important to identify them is because to the extent that people are able to tap into these core identity and really find self-expression for these core pieces of themselves in a meaningful way, every day, basically, then I think that is strongly correlated in my own mind, again, anecdotally though, with like a strong sense of meaning, fulfillment, like you're living your sense of your life's purpose, flourishing, right? Instead of kind of stagnating. And I see so many people, some of my friends and family who seem like they're stagnating in life. So it's not like this narrow application. And so I guess I've been thinking about like maybe trying to address it. I mean, you can't maybe really address it to everybody because not everybody's interested, but maybe kind of neurodivergence, anybody who's neurodivergent and has had to mask or has had to be less of themselves in order to get along in the world. I don't know.
It's I don't think it's well, I'm very almost naturally. non non Buddhist non-conceptualized self sort of viewpoint. I don't I see the this idea of the self as something that can be useful, but I don't really attach too much to it.
Yeah. And
It's
I think because I follow this guy, I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh is how we say
Thich
his
Nhat
name.
Hanh, yes,
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Vietnamese Buddhist monk, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's such a wise person in my own opinion, my own assessment, just because I say it doesn't make it true or whatever, but
Just a second, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, oh, you can't see it. Oh, there you
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
go.
Yeah, and he's the one that said this thing that has really stuck with me, and he said it like, I think he's deceased, right? So he said it a long
Yeah.
time ago, but I read it like a long time ago, like before I was kind of like feeling like I was in a good place, I guess. I was still maybe in uh, the reckoning. And he said to love someone the wrong way hurts them. That's kind of like a paraphrase. And that was like really shocking to me because in a lot of ways, people I'd become obsessed with, like my crushes or whatever, I'd be like, I just love them. I just love them very intensely. I love them in this like controlling way, this manipulative, possessing kind of way. And then after I get done with them, then I'll just kind of be like, okay, let's move on. That's the way I love them. I just love them, and I didn't understand that that could be hurtful to somebody because to me, it didn't come from a place of wanting to hurt them. If anything, it came from that place of love, that kind of obsession, that kind of compulsion. So I have been introduced to him like in that way, and I still try to understand his stuff, but I have to say that like because I follow him on Instagram. He's not around, but somebody has like this account in which they're just like posting every day a bunch of his stuff. And the stuff that he says about self, I probably do not understand and do not see eye to
Well,
eye with him about.
I can read
Everything
you
else, I'm like,
this
sure.
yeah. Well, there, I can read you this quick line, and you tell me what you think. He says, according to Buddhism, a human being is composed of five aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness.
Mm,
And then you have the Hindus who go beyond that. There's a true self where there is no basically anything you can label is not yourself because you can't label yourself. It's very complicated, tricky way of thinking. But
mhm.
it's very it's something that I read a lot into that even though I don't know. It's very interesting and it speaks to some of the conditional uh aspects of my life and in a way it does make things a little easier because I don't have to others there is a need almost to an excessive need especially nowadays to have some sort of fixed identity, whether it's about your sex or politics.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's very taxing. It's a lot of energy, and I'd rather just be able to play things by ear and be loose with it and keep options open. Like for example, politically, yes, I'm more on the left,
Mhm,
but I do kind of like Donald Trump because he is authentically himself.
mhm,
How can I not like someone who's because most people are just boring, really. I mean, just it's basically the same person in different skin suit, really, is what I think. And but so when you really meet someone who is and it comes with dating too, it's like you really have to be something for me to have any kind of interest beyond maybe beyond physical, for example. So, I might not vote for him. I mean, I'm a vote, probably won't vote, period. But I like that himself completely in a
Oh,
world of people who are not and who are, but politically, I don't really support him. I don't agree, but I don't hate the guy. But I don't know if I don't hate, but I like that he's himself.
yeah. So it's interesting, and I do agree with you. And I've had people write me, like email me, being like, "Hey, I don't know how to not have like a political position about some stuff like in this day and age. Maybe this is like an issue that doesn't kind of reflect, broader kind of global trends. Maybe this is a narrower issue of people experiencing this, but people are writing me and saying things like, I feel like I have to have a position on abortion, for instance, and it has to be like really well educated, and it has to be whatever. I guess, Ethel Kennedy, who is married to Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Sr. I guess she, like, whenever she would have people over for dinner, would like grill them on whatever was happening. So like JFK Jr. brought his like fiance there, and he was like, okay, just try to get like as educated about current events as you can. Because she's gonna grill you about this. And she did. And it's like, but like, why? Why be educated about current events? Like, I can see the value, but also, there's a limit to our time and attention and stuff. But yeah, I do agree with you that people seem to want to, I mean, I guess it's even in the name, play identity politics, in which people have to have an identity, and this is how they're being defined. And this should also kind of control the way that they think, and the way that they vote, and the way that they act, and the products that they buy. No Bud Light, or yes on whatever coffee. I just got an ad in the mail that said, "Hey, do you want to like switch your phone plan because we're not a woke business, and your current phone plan may be woke."
So it's a sleep phone program.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't kind of understand, like, and so they're like, this way you can guarantee that your money's not going to, promote woke causes or something. I was like, wow, okay. But yeah, I agree with you, and I think that it's interesting, and I think maybe we kind of go through phases like this with society, of where we have like, I don't know, like, I live by the ocean, and I'm interested in, watching the ocean and like waves. You see like waves come in sets, right? For whatever reason. So you get like 3 to 5 big waves, and then it will go back to being gentle and stuff. And I do think that stuff comes in waves, definitely, socially. So it's funny, so I will acknowledge that, but then I think it's funny that you say with Donald Trump, speaking of Buddhist teachings on self, is that the thing that you like about him is that he is himself.
Yeah. And then he walks into a room, he doesn't adjust himself. Everyone
Yeah.
else adjusts themselves to him,
Hmm.
and they're baffled and they don't know what to do. And and you watch the news, and they still don't know how to. They're so corporate and so inside this this idea of almost a gravitas, this idea of gravitas, and they're just befuddled by him constantly. They're unable to adjust to the reality of him existing in politics or as just being a person. They don't understand. They can't understand someone who does not give an inch at all in regard to their personality.
Yeah. So I mean, I have kind of like two thoughts, and I'm worried that I've already forgotten the first one. So one of them though is, I do want to follow up with you about this idea of like, if there is no self, then what is the self that he's not doing? And the other one, I think I do remember it, is this idea of like, this is what I want for everybody, I guess, with like the second book, is that nobody feels like they have to give an inch. I know that sounds like really antisocial, and I'm super interested to like hear people's concerns about this, because I'm like working on the proposal now, and I'm obviously obviously, obviously straight. No, I'm obviously pitching it to people who may or may not, probably not psychopaths or whatever. And so people who may have like some difficulties, with some of these concepts, like the idea of like, because I think that you're not the first person to tell me that they appreciate Donald Trump for this reason. And I think part of it comes from, I'll speak from for my own self and then allow you to speak for your own self too. But for my own self, like when people are really real like that, it's kind of like this weird velveteen rabbit thing where it seems like almost everybody I interact with are people like you described with skin suits. And it seems like it's very difficult for me to understand who they are as a person because they are uh, what did you say? They're you didn't say adapting. What did you say? They're being influenced by him. They're changing the way that they are when he walks in the room. What was the word you used?
They adjust. They
They
adjust to him.
adjust. Such a good word for this. They just adjust. People who are constantly adjusting. And like I noticed that as somebody who kind of doesn't feel that compulsion to adjust socially. Like I noticed everybody doing it like as a child and I was like these people are weak-willed. That was my judgment of people as a child and I
They're
thought they're
robots.
hypocrites. Yeah, it's hard to see it's hard to see the humanity of them when they're constantly adjusting because you're like, "Well, what is them?" Like, it doesn't seem like anything, and so it's as a child, it was easier for me to kind of objectify people because I struggled to see their humanity, but the reason why I struggled to see their humanity is because of this adjusting, this adjusting that people kind of naturally seem to do, where I'm like, why? Why are you why are you
The most,
adjusting to
yeah,
other people to constantly? It just seemed like it was this constant compulsive thing the same way that a baby, smiling and flirting with you is like this compulsion. And
what I hate
go ahead.
what I hate the most is when everyone says it's just what you do.
Hmm. One time, one of my law school friends, after I wrote the book, he like reached out and I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah, like come out. I have a lot of free time." I'm not like doing anything, in the year or two following being fired as a law professor or whatever. So he came out, we went to Disneyland. It was his first time going to Disneyland. I was like, this will be a good activity. But then kind of during this like Disneyland trip, he started trying to convince me, like proselytize me. And I think that's fine. I have no problem with people like sharing their beliefs. But he was like, that's just not done. The way that you're like living your life is just not done. I was like, but why? Why is it just not done? And I thought it was interesting because he was also so I guess, like, befuddled at my reaction. Like, how could I not see that that's just what's not done, that you have to adjust, that that is, like, the way society operates, and, like, I was, like, eroding the very foundations of society by by not adjusting, and not adjusting in, like, this very kinda obvious, like, blatant way.
It's like it, honestly, I have these um I almost long for um to wander a post-apocalyptic society because I but fully automated one. So I don't have to eat trash or anything because there is you can almost see other people in terms of packs by how they dress. You got the business, they operate a certain way, you know how they work. And it's like being in a jungle and it's almost like I rather just be on an island or it requires a lot of energy I think. I just and you talked about earlier about the what did you say, mischief stage? The
Playground stage. But
Yeah,
Mischief Sage is a good one too.
well, I'm sort of um getting back into that very simple stuff, fake names,
Mhm.
making up compelling backgrounds that events that didn't happen, and then just dropping the person once they become insufferable. And it's yeah, I don't even know where how I got on this tangent, but go ahead.
No, I think this is interesting. So, why are you getting back into that? Is it because it's, like, enjoyable
Boredom,
to you? Yeah, boredom.
boredom.
Yeah,
I don't
that's our motivation. That's our motivation for almost everything. And the
boredom.
boredom is, like, is there a solution to the boredom? You know? I recently saw, like, this kind of, it was like an Instagram ad, and it was for somebody who teaches people to make online courses, like online courses for, I don't know, cross stitching or whatever else. And she said, you have to pitch to people what is the solution. Your thing has to be a solution to a problem that somebody's experiencing. And that's such an interesting way of thinking about the world in general, is just like what is the problem, for all the things that I think are important to know, to kind of think, okay, but what is the problem that they're solving, you know? And that
Right.
is the problem of psychopathy, is boredom. And that anything that treats it really has to solve that problem. That is the problem that needs solving.
It's boredom. It's okay for there's the whole I don't know how it is with you, but the non-startle response issue. And I've been hit by a car once hard enough where one shoe came off and I rolled off the hood. I didn't have to go to the hospital. I just walked away. And that was probably the a moment where walking away and just my heartbeat was it wasn't beating. I walked away. I was fine, so I didn't make a big deal about it. And as I'm walking, maybe not 2 blocks away, I'm thinking because what happened was I was walking past the pizzeria, and the
Mhm.
delivery driver was parked, like double
Oh,
parked. He
yeah.
wasn't watching me. He was talking to somebody else, and then he hit me.
Mhm.
And after that, I'm just walking away, maybe 2 blocks, and I'm thinking I should have went in and got something to eat. I didn't think about life or death or my about how close a call was. There was no shock or fear. There was just no. Well, it happened and it's over, and it's going to be cool to talk about. And the first time that that I should have been aware about this issue was brain surgery. I got into the emergency room. They wheeled me in there, and even the surgeon or one of them, I don't, maybe it was the surgeon, maybe it was the anesthesia, whatever. Said, your heartbeat, you're pretty calm for a guy who's about to have brain surgery, and I was like, all right.
Low resting heart rate is hilarious.
And I had a kid point a gun at me, and I he wanted to rob me, and I just said no, and I went around him. I did basically uh, what the guy did in Office Space. I just walked around Lumberg and just kept on going, and he had no response. He didn't want to shoot me, but he had a gun. He didn't know what to do, so I just
Uh-huh.
went around him.
Yeah.
And there's an awareness of, oh, that's interesting, but there's no oh my God, there's no startleness, there's no deep fear. And
Yeah.
that feeds into it, I think, like just waking up and realizing you're going to be bored again. And how do I get something? So I've been talking to some people and I actually find that just flirting with people is a good way to alleviate boredom. Because
Yeah.
when you flirt, it throws people off their game a bit when you flirt with
Yes.
them. Because even if it's successful or not, it's still fun to just sort of, hey, you know, they get a
Well,
little.
Yeah, they I think maybe what it's doing, again, using this word adjust, is you're requiring them to adjust to you. Like they went into the bank thinking it was gonna be X, and then you flirt with them, and then you're basically saying it's Y, and so they have to adjust in like this they're thrown off because they're not expecting it, I think. And so I can see
Most
how that
people
would like
don't know how, most people don't know how to handle a deeply well emotionally well written love note. And then meeting you and you're like, hi, how you doing?
Uh-huh.
And this is wait, you didn't you? And it's like, yeah, it's up to you. And there's a confusion and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but it's one game that's entertaining to play.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. What's
It's
entertaining about it to you?
the reaction and the 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 inventiveness of it and the gauging of the response and um if it pays off, then I get to have a steady partner, and if it doesn't, well, I look, I don't want to make too much of a mess out of my life. So, if it's I'm uncomfortable, I'm married or something, then it's like, okay, I just want you to know how I feel.
Uh-huh.
And I leave it at that. And if they have some sort of tension toward me, that's sexual or not, but that's entertaining in itself to have.
Yeah. But is
But
it like,
yeah,
are you trying to, because I think this is something that people misunderstand often about psychopathic seduction. Are you trying to get them to sleep with you? Is like sex even like one of the primary motivations?
it's no, no, it would be great, but really, it's seeing if I can get in. I think I like the idea of them getting emotionally invested in me and creating some sort of maybe a bond on me,
Yes.
putting a bond.
See, this is what I've been thinking about recently is that I thought to myself, and sorry to bring this back to you.
No, it's okay.
And I hope I doesn't sound like I've been, like, setting you up. It's been super interesting, and I had no intention of where this was going or whatever. But I kind of wonder about this myself. I've been thinking about it, like, psychopaths, even though you say that you wanna wander a post-apocalyptic world, and so do I. That's been my go-to fantasy over the years is death
Death, the freedom
and
of
complete
everything.
isolation. Yeah, being a hermit. Those have been, like, my go-to fantasies. Um and but then I thought, okay, because I'm thinking about like these autistic, especially women, who mask and stuff, and I think there's something about like belonging, and the only reason I really thought about this is because, I was like kind of thinking about some like ideas, some like what book titles, I guess, so I was like, I should probably put neurodivergent in the title because people, will be like, okay, this is like a clear audience then, neurodivergent, but pretty broad still. And so I said,
Yeah,
like, neurodivergence guide to what? And I said, at first, I said to not fitting in. I was like, this would be like a good book because, like, that's what I'm trying to help them do is to stop adjusting constantly, and to just being themselves, to stop the adjustment. You don't have to keep adjusting constantly. You can be more of a normal human person if you're not adjusting just kind of by compulsively, just constantly adjusting to other people and what's happening. So that's what I thought. And then my literary agent was like, can we put something a little bit more positive? And so I thought about that thing I told you about the Instagram lady. Like, what is the problem that, the not fitting in solves? Like, what is the problem? Like, what's the problem behind all of this? The problem of psychopathies, boredom, or whatever. What's the problem for these neurodivergent people masking, or even normal people masking? Everybody who's constantly doing these adjustments rather than doing what you said you feel Trump does, which is just be himself and never adjust. Like, uh what is the thing? Why are they adjusting? What's the problem that they solve by adjusting? And I think it is belonging. And so I started thinking about this, and that was like my girlfriend who was like, "Oh, that should be the title, a neurodivergence guide to belonging." And I thought at first I was like, "Oh, that's like a little cheesy and whatever." But then I started thinking like, is that the problem? Is that the thing that we're all trying to do, is just belong?
I think I'm also doing it. Well, I am also doing it for opportunity and for
Right,
some
sure.
sort of mo upward
Mhm.
mobility. I mean, if I'm successful at doing this successfully with an heiress,
Yeah.
there you go. That
Exactly, yeah. There's
jackpot.
a
I'll
it's
stay.
kind of like planting seeds, like even like
Planting
you
seeds. Thank you.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like
Thought of that. Is that's
tomatoes.
exactly it. It's planting
Yeah.
seeds.
And you don't know what's gonna happen. You're not super invested in it, but nor does it take that much time and effort to just plant a seed.
That's right. Oh my God. I am now thinking about so many different types of seeds and so many
Mhm.
different types of benefits.
Yeah,
Uh, And you were talking about was it death? What death was one of your
yeah.
fantasies?
Mhm.
Um, just
Not like
recently.
Go
Well,
ahead.
not you mean not suicide, but maybe the
Right.
well. Anyway, okay. So
Mhm.
boredom, and just this year I started smoking cigarettes, and I like the sensation that it gives me, in the head and sometimes in the body too. But it's this desire to it's like I'm and even before I started doing it for this reason, I thought of it as I want to flirt with death.
Mm.
So I think so it's like, every cigarette, it's like just me and death and I'm giving it a kiss. Just a kiss. I'm playing with mortality.
Yeah.
And that oh, cancer, maybe not, or it's a bit exciting.
Mhm.
I have a let's see if you can see this. On the well, I'll take it out of I think I'll hold it.
Yeah.
Rem and
The
then
little
on the
skull
back,
guy.
remember to live, and it says in Latin above.
Yeah, memento vivere, remember to live.
Remember,
Yeah.
and on the back,
Says memento mori, your time will come.
that's how I live every day.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that, and I'm just trying to enjoy, not be bored every day. And this career thing, I'm not making a lot of money. I'm practically almost in poverty, and so I don't have any ability to. The past is always dead to me, and I don't have an imagination for the future. So I'm sort of the Buddhist ideal of living in the present, but that's not really totally beneficial.
Yes, I'm glad we got back to Buddhism. I'm glad we got back to Buddhism because I get it, like I read the Buddhist teachings about like lack of self, and I think, yeah, it's these chicken people who are
I love that.
constantly yeah, adjusting and feel like they need to have like an opinion about abortion, like, and that does take a lot of energy, as you said. It takes too much energy to feel like you have to kind of think, who am I with regard to all these different things? But the stuff that I'm talking about isn't that. It's not like that's more of an illusion of self. That's just like, I don't know. That's like you kind of being a mirror and just reflecting in some weird way, either accurately or some distorted way, the things that you see around yourself. That's just you constantly reacting to what's happening to you. But I don't think that that's self. And so I guess I do agree with the Buddhists about most people have kind of this idea of self that causes them suffering. Like, I think that's obvious is, these people who are trying to, play at, for instance, identity politics, like I think that does cause them suffering. Maybe it causes them joy in the moment, but like ultimately it also leaves them so open and vulnerable for people to attack them by saying, Trump's of this or Trump's that. And then they're like, ah, like everybody's a snowflake a little bit about stuff when they identify with things that aren't them. That's kind of the problem. Like if I think, for instance, like I'm such a Dodgers fan, Dodgers baseball or whatever, and then the Dodgers lose, then I'm crushed. Like, why am I crushed? The Dodgers aren't me. There's no connection, actual connection between the me and the Dodgers, and so I have to kind of like people need to police that a little bit better, where it's like this is not something that's you, but I am taking it, this is not something that's me, but I am taking it personally. That would be your clue to doing some like Buddhism style suffering.
Right.
Right, where it's like this is not something that you were like meant to take personally, and you're just leaving yourself kind of vulnerable for it. uh so yeah, I do see that. And I should say, I've mentioned this before, that Buddhist monks and psychopaths both have really low startle responses. They've done like research about this. You can Google it. And
There's
they
yeah.
yeah, Buddhist monks are better at like reading people than the average person. So are psychopaths. It's like weird to think that like if you just kind of react less, if you're less reactive, emotionally reactive to the things, the stimuli that you perceive around you, that you suddenly become more aware too of the things
Do you
around
meditate?
you. I do meditate.
Yes, sometimes there's a point in meditation where I haven't gotten that feeling again, but it feels worth it. But I just like the idea of not having choosing my thoughts
Yeah,
instead of just them uh being it's not a cloud. It just doesn't have to be there. You can sort of just pull your awareness away from it.
right. Yeah, I think
And what you
that's
said about the monks, there was a did you hear about the monk who uh he was meditating and they fired a gun near his head and he didn't respond?
yeah, he didn't respond. And
And
then you
the
have
one yeah.
people on the other hand who are like reacting to everything, every little thing, reacting to like some news in a foreign country that's like causing them to like, have all of these reactions.
That's my mother. Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's it. Yeah. 6 o'clock news.
Uh-huh.
Makes you think the world's going to hell.
Yeah. And they kind of, I don't know why they have, in my mind, I think it's like a lack of good personal boundaries. They're too permeable to the world. Like I think about like our skin. Our skin is selectively permeable. Like it will absorb lotion and water and stuff. And but it doesn't absorb all sorts of things. It's not like every single thing that touches it, it absorbs and takes in, like it is selectively permeable. And we
Are you
too with
saying that
our
society has identity retention?
I don't know what that means.
Identity retention as opposed to water retention?
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, like bloated with I think
Yeah.
that people are personally, I don't know if society, I don't know if we can say stuff about society in general, especially since we're like a world society, really, and it's really difficult for me to understand that the true nature of that world society because everybody's just so different. But I think that yeah, people in the society I'm exposed to seem to be like really bloated with like identity stuff, like carrying a lot of water weight.
th- there's something to be said about being very spare, as probably you and I are.
Yeah, and I think
Freedom
that's
of
what Buddhism's trying to get at, but it's like it's kind of what you say, even though you're like, okay, and that's why I too have been attracted to Buddhist thought is because I do think that there's clarity in thinking that way and thinking, hey, kind of the same way that like the TV show Wheel of Time gets you kind of thinking about gender roles. Like Buddhist thought gets you thinking about the role of self. And are there ways in which that we kind of just accept self as being X when really, like, hey, think about it more like Y. Does that seem also true? Like trying to just get you to rethink stuff and kind of perceive things in different ways so you can see things. What is that, like that poem line where it's, you come home for the first time or whatever, like you're out traveling and then you come back to home, but you see home differently. And so now it's like you're really home. So you're there for the first time. I'm butchering that. I apologize. People hopefully understand what I'm talking
Can
about.
you can't go home again? Or is that just a saying? You can't go home. It's
Uh,
just yeah.
yeah. All right. Now I'll look it up. But identity, I think, is something that like normal people uh kind of
Well, it's identity. It's identification. And who in you is doing I'm the I identification because it's a
right.
label, it's a designation. So who are you that's deciding this is my identification?
Yeah, and I get that, I get all these like Sam Harris things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Uh but I'm not seeing the poem pop up
That's right.
immediately.
Don't fix it on 100.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
want you to know that I wrote. I just want you to know that I wrote down so I could remember it. Chicken people.
Well, chicken people, I think, are like, it's just kind of a word for these people who are constantly adjusting, is actually
It's
like
better
a
than
really good.
sheeple.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Well,
it's funnier than sheeple.
yeah, it is kind of funnier, and I remember kind of saying it in a context that had nothing to do with the animal. I think it had something to do with the fruit, like, or like whatever it was. And it was just like really context specific. Oh, the people that are choosing chicken in this situation are blah, 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 or something. And now, yeah, chicken people, though, it does seem like it is their name, right? Like,
Eh,
there's,
they're all just
there,
wandering around bobbing their heads.
yeah, there's like a rightness to it. Yeah. And it's not to say like chicken the animals, they have like tons of good qualities. Number one, delicious. Number two, it is true that they're like able to stabilize their head like really well for some reason. And maybe that's kind of the benefit, and the
It's
problem
better
is
than
that they're,
saying cock people.
yeah, cock people, exactly.
Rooster.
They're constantly adjusting
Eh,
to
yeah.
things where it's like just let your head float or whatever, like let your head move or something. You can, like, things don't have to so yeah, let me think. There were a couple things. So I wanted to follow up with you about the Trump thing.
Yeah.
So speaking of Buddhism and the sense of self, so you say that you like that Trump doesn't adjust, or you admire that, because that at least seems, I think this is what you
Authentic.
said. Yeah, authentic. Yeah, there's like an authenticity. So what is he being authentic to, though, if there is no self?
Well, certainly being authentic to the things he is attached to, his ego,
Mhm.
certainly. Whereas others hide that he is um I think he's clinically incapable of seeing that part of him, but at the same time, everyone is such he just is what he says he is, and he is that. He doesn't there's no he's not run-of-the-mill milk toast Biden person presentation. He just yeah, I said that, and this guy's a midget, and I don't like him, you know.
Mhm.
So th- whether it's negative honesty, a harmful type of honesty, it's honesty, and that's valuable. That type of
Yeah.
just being your, it's just people are. It's so hard to find someone who's themselves, and they tend to be the most interesting people when they
Yeah.
are openly, totally themselves, as
Yeah,
opposed to chicken people.
yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, the chicken people are hard for me to even see as people. The people who are themselves, whatever that means, and we can explore that a little bit. They're easier to see as people.
They're more blatantly open about their ego presentation. It's not it's they tell you what they want, they tell you why they want it, and their actions are totally honest if they're insulted. He will
Mhm,
tell you, Trump will tell you, if you're a woman and you disagree with him, you're ugly. Oh,
mhm,
if you're a man and you're shorter than him, oh, you're a midget. You're a little person. Get out of here, little Marco.
uh-huh.
And there's something, and he doesn't get flustered by anybody. He just smacks him down, like, and he doesn't ever think he looks like an idiot. And there is something genuinely impenetrable about him, and that's kind of aspirational.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I myself wouldn't wanna be impenetrable. But I do want to be selectively permeable. Like, I want to have more control over the things that, like, get brought into me and kind of require my attention, like the things that I react to. I wanna be more intentional about that. I wanna be more intentional about, like, the beliefs of others, for instance, especially the beliefs of others about me, that I'm a little person like Marco or ugly, like these women or whatever. I don't want to allow those to even, like, come close to getting inside my psyche because that's just somebody else's stuff, and I don't really
Well,
see the value of reacting to other people's opinions.
as
Uh,
much as I say that I like that about him, again,
mhm,
and not his politics, but yes, the negative aspect about it, the downfall, the downside of that is that if you don't if he's like Achilles, but he doesn't know he has that an Achilles heel. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
So it's also his weakness.
right,
But
yeah.
yeah,
So I can see what you're saying. Yeah, the confidence, the lack of adjusting is, like, I do think really admirable. And I think everybody would be happier if they were a little bit more like that. And I agree with you, like, the problem with becoming so kind of, lack of adjusting is that you are not you're less open, I think, to kind of different realities, different perspectives on reality, which can leave you kind of like blindsided, I think is kind of how I view him. So yeah, this idea of being like selectively permeable, like both being vulnerable but being intentional, and not just kind of adjusting, and to the extent that you're adjusting, to be more intentional about the adjusting in like ways that seem, right to you. Uh, Man, I was gonna talk about something else, but I forgetted it. Chicken people adjust. So psychopaths kind of don't adjust, like instinctively, compulsively in that same way. And that's where it is difficult to kind of like see the chicken people kind of seriously because you're like, why are you so uh not there? You're there but not there. You're like a shadow person. That's it's hard to see the chicken people as other than like a shadow person, like just kind of like a weird software apparition, like a holograph or something that's just like a non-player character that's just there for you to interact with because that's almost like the way that they seem to treat their own existence is that they're just,
Like they're sleepwalking.
yeah, they're
There's a,
sleepwalking.
there's a there's a sort of a haze over their eyes, maybe.
Yeah. Huh.
You almost want to just scream in their face to see what happens.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh, now I remember. Okay, so I always use musical analogies because that is one of my educational backgrounds. But one of the things that is interesting about timpani playing, you can Google what a timpani is, also known as a kettle drum, is that they often have so they're called struts, the different like screws on the side. I think there's like eight of them. Yeah, there is 8 of them on a traditional timpani or standard timpani. So these struts and they form pairings, right? So there's the pairings that are kind of like across from each other this way, and then there are the pairings that are across from each other this way. And the whole idea of maintaining a timpani, putting a new head on, for instance, is that you want there to be consistent tension on all of the struts. And it's not really a matter of you can just kind of like even test it with a tension thing. You can kind of get it, a tension monitor, they make them where you can kind of get the close, but then you have to do the rest by ear. And what you're trying to do is get they call it clearing the heads, clearing the timpani heads, and you're trying to get maximum resonance is the idea. Is you want there to be perfectly equal tension all around the head of the timpani. So the timpani has maximum resonance. And by that we mean that like all parts of the head are vibrating at the same frequency. So there's like a maximum kind of consistency there. And I think this is kind of what we mean by Trump is that like he is consistent. He may be playing the wrong note because whether or not a head is clear has nothing to do with whether or not the timpani is correctly pitched for that particular music. It just means there's maximum consistency. Whatever the note is, there's maximum consistency with regarding that note, whether it's a good note or a bad note. Uh, so he is there's like a purity to kind of like the way that he lives, I guess, interacts with people is probably a better way to put it, in that he's not adjusting. There's not kind of like these little like, this lug is slightly off or something, or has been damaged or bent or something. Uh, so this is kind of how I think of self is that often you have to kind of get to, I don't know if it's a chicken or egg thing or you just kind of are working with both of them at the same time, but you're trying to get that purity. You're trying to adjust less. You're trying to react less to just kind of things that are external to you and act more from like a self-driven place, like the your motivations are coming from inside as opposed to a reaction to the outside more. That's kind of like
Proactive.
the trade-off. The self itself, just like timpani playing, so you have like a pedal that will bring all the struts down and up is the way that the timpani mechanism works. So the pedal changes the pitch depending on the song. So you're like in the key of A flat, you're going to have different notes than if you're in the key of G, right? So you have to adjust things. And so I don't think of self as being like this stable thing that like once it's there for reals. But I do think there's something about this idea of having like enough of a stable sense of self that there's maximum resonance. That when you act in the world, you are you are feeling that resonance because it's self-expression. That there's something about yourself that you're expressing in the way that you're choosing to act. And I think that it's that self-expression that is the feeling that you get, that sense of resonance, that leads to this sense of flourishing, sense of meaning, sense that you're living your life's purpose. That is the antidote to a psychopath's boredom.
How to find that meaning, though. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
not.
guess the meaning, yeah, the the difficulty is how do you find the self? How do you find the things that are
Well,
self-expression for you?
if you if you if you if you go even deeper into um this idea of the self, um, you don't Um, well, it's sort of like whatever the self, this idea of not self, it's sort of like the rain, but in reality, it's the ocean
Mm,
quality. It's like the ocean in a raindrop. It's one and the same, but they're different. And
yeah,
I think somebody once said, we're all just we come from the ocean, we go back to the ocean.
yeah.
Whether you're a condensation on a glass or a raindrop or whatever, we all eventually go back to the ocean. So we come from a source and then we go back to it, but really that thing is us. And it's the losing of conceptions and all identifications. And I find that very compelling.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And I do think that there are aspects of our identity that are collective, and that's like a really interesting duality. And you can't that's what I mean about this like idea of belonging, I guess, because I think I've come at it, until recently from this idea that okay, and then once you have a self, then you have like a sense of meaning and fulfillment and like you're living your life's purpose and that's the end. But I don't think that is the end. That's the thing I've been thinking about recently, is that the belonging is the end. The belonging is the problem. It's not even like the alleviation of boredom is the problem. It's really like the flourishing, feeling like you're instead of being like, what is the boredom coming from? Really is like an interesting question. Like if you felt like you were flourishing in your life, like every day you're like engaging with new and interesting things, you wouldn't experience the boredom. So the boredom is really just a symptom of the fact that you're not really engaging with your life every day. And in order to engage with life, there has to be part of you that is being engaged. And in order for there to be part of you that's being engaged, there has to be this aspect of your identity that is being expressed, that it's self-expression. There's some sort of resonance with what the thing that you're doing and like something that is you. Now, the something that's you could be also part of your collective identity. I'm not saying that it's like this kind of separate thing. You can self-express your collective identity just as you can self-express your individual identity and still feel that resonance, still feel like that you know that you are being very much you in that moment, and that gives people, I think, a great pleasure and sense of meaning.
I
Here's kind of
suppose it's hard to find. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's hard to find it, the world of just trying to live, uh, money, and it makes it hard because I don't my job, whatever, it doesn't it's not me. It's
Mhm.
not what I want to do, but it's like anybody else. Like anybody else, I guess. You have to go where the money is, and you have to work. But it's not in the boredom of that, and the jobs that I've quit or that I've been fired from, and the places I've left because just the utter boredom of that, just walking out and not coming back. It's just I'm looking to if only I was some type of artist. But I don't know. If I could combine the uh the fun I have when I plant these seeds,
Mhm.
and at the same time make a living, I think that that would be the dream career, just I want to have fun and make money like anybody else. but
Mhm.
my fun is different than others. And
Yeah.
without that ability to not be bored, I don't feel that I am being myself, if that makes any sense.
To back up a little bit, that last sentence, without the feeling that you might be bored, you can't feel like you can be yourself?
Or, well, mm, meaning I am not myself when I am working. I am,
Mhm.
so I'm trying to, I guess, be myself in a way that's sustainable as a living, but it's fun, and this is what everyone wants, really.
Yeah.
So, so I have to, I just have to increase my fun, I guess, in my personal life in new ways that won't get me in deep trouble. I mean, but
Yeah. So
yeah.
I agree with you, and I think, like, to say that, uh like, I don't mean that self-expression is not limited by your circumstances. Like, I often think of I like opera, and I like the operatic voice. Like, I think, some people have such a beautiful voice, and opera is has only been around for like 500 years or something. And so imagine somebody who had like the perfect genetics, the perfect interest, the perfect, they're the best operatic voice of all time or something. But instead of being born in this 500-year period in which opera exists, they were instead born, in like 500 BC. Like, what avenues of self-expression do they have as having these, this skill set, this interest, this kind of body that's perfectly suited for something that does not currently exist in the world. So I like that thought experiment because I often think, people like you or people like me, people like anybody, like, what are the things about them that aren't finding expression in this world through no real fault of their own? Not that there's like a moral fault, but I mean, even like a causation fault. It's not like they, just need to stop procrastinating or something, but that that thing just doesn't even exist, but it will exist, or it used to exist, or exists in a parallel universe. Like, it's part of the reality of possibilities that they could have had that experience in this life, but it's not part of their reality of possibilities. And I think that's like a tricky question. And that's why I think that self isn't like this thing where it's like everybody should just like get a job that's their passion. I think it is this very like difficult thing that requires you to be almost an anthropologist of your own self and to kind of like, empirically study what are the things that you're willing to do, like, I guess what just kind of resonates, and to just kind of almost like a gardener go through and like weed out your plot and plant the seeds that you do want, and get rid of some of the stuff that's like honestly going nowhere, for you, or maybe even like is choking the seeds that you do want. I guess it's like a very a not a nice solution because I'm kind of saying like go ahead and climb a mountain, but it takes a lot of time and effort to climb a mountain. It's like made up of just like step after step after step. So I think to be like worried about like what the top of the mountain's gonna look like, will you find a career that will provide the money that you need? Plus, like not, n- you'll find enough self-expression in that career to feel good about things. Like, will that happen? I think yes. I just know from like my own personal experience and kind of just seeing other people make these small steps that like things get incrementally better. And it doesn't really I think, soothe the mind, though, to say that, because you have very real needs in the present to have a place to live, to have enough money to pay for the things that you need to live, so that is a difficulty, but I would say, maybe instead of people trying to make big changes and saying, okay, quit the job or, do this, it's just ask intuition. Intuition will tell you like the little changes, the little tweaks that you need to make in your life to make things better, and for some people it may be quitting their job. And for some people it may be like staying in the job while, having more interest outside first. But eventually everything is going to kind of get subsumed uh in whatever's happening, as we keep kind of adding things to like the soil of our lives and planting these seeds that we want, that are seeds that feel like self-expression to us, we're going to see fruit.
There's some wisdom in there, Emmy. There was some real wisdom.
Oh, thank you for this. Well, mostly I get the garden idea from Voltaire, right? Candide, which I feel like is a criminally underrated work. No, I don't think it's underrated. I think most people like it, but most people don't think to read it. But it's a really quick, fun read. I'll just throw that out there for everybody. It's like 100 pages or something. Hilarious.
It reminds me a little of what we said about the garden. That quote by Othello in Othello.
Hmm.
To the ooh how our wills, our intentions, our wills are like our gardeners, and we
Mm.
plant this and we plant that. Okay. I underlined, I highlighted it actually, and I can't. I would love to just remember one line of Shakespeare, but basically, yeah, it's what you said.
Yeah. Shakespeare's like a really good example of this too. I was thinking the other day because I follow some musicians on Instagram, and so I saw like somebody was doing like must have like a musical score to it somehow of The Tempest, and I thought it's crazy that we're still doing The Tempest like these
Temp-
centuries later, and we're like, everybody come out, come see The Tempest, and like, wow, what a like crazy genius mastermind. And think too about like Bach, who is my favorite composer, what a crazy genius mastermind. And but neither one of them did it for the glory, that's what I kind of like to think about them. I feel like I often the people that I admire the most, for whatever reason, seem to be doing it because of the great pleasure that they get from doing it. And they don't really worry about the outcome and like whether it's going to be well received or whether it's going to, outlast them or whether it's going to be whatever. And I don't think that uh whether or not people, I mean, you can't control the way that people receive something. You can only control, and this is a very stoic philosophy, you can only control yourself, and the way that you react to things and the things that you like to do. So I think it gets again at this idea of adjusting. Like if you're doing something for what for reasons to achieve a particular outcome, like you're outcome oriented, I'm going to do this to get this, that is its own form of adjusting. And eventually you want to kind of reduce that the same way that you reduce everything, even something kind of practically speaking, like, I think it's going to, or, I need money or something. So I'm going to do this job. I think eventually even that needs to be something that we don't allow ourselves necessarily to adjust to, at least not kind of in this instinctive, compulsive way, but in this like intentional, thoughtful way in which we're really trying to, as much as possible, maximize the self expression and the engagement that we experience in the things that we choose to do.
Right, and um, I'm gonna certainly tend to my garden and try to sow some positive outcomes.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead, ask me a question. Well, I won't answer it necessarily, but you can certainly ask it.
How how do you what is love to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think love is one of these complex emotions that's made up of, like, various other little parts, and I think that it's kind of like mead or whatever, like beer, like, in the ancients kinda making it, because 'cause they're trying to remove the impurities, but some of the impurities are, like, adding to the taste of it, you know, and kind of some of the advantages, some of the benefits of it, and it's just kind of like tinkering with that until you get, something that, again, that feels like you about it, like it's a way of experiencing something or someone else that makes it part of you, but makes it part of you in this way that doesn't hurt your identity. It You really are integrating it, and perhaps it's because it is it's self-expression for the collective identity, which is to understand, and this is again a Stoic philosophy, that the distinctions between us and between other things in the world are less firm than we realize. And to a large extent, we really are everything and everyone.
Well, we are an ocean of quantum energy, really.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. On multiple
Um,
levels. Yeah, we are everything and everyone. We're all super interconnected.
um, See, when I my current my the reason why I ask that question is I am so again, it's the boredom of chicken people, and that includes chicken ladies.
Mhm.
And I even if they're attractive, which can be great, if I'm considering an actual partner, I would have to like them. And um there my dating life is there's a lot of eyes glazing over. For me, my eyes glaze over a lot. It's the same thing. I know you have a dog. I know you love your dog, and I feel that looking for, I don't know who or what will interest me, but I, I guess I don't know what I'm looking for really. I'm I don't want to in my mind I guess it's just about, and it shouldn't be, settling
Mm,
and tolerable. Who's tolerable?
yeah.
And but when I think of love, it's such a mind so it's a bit confusing. I mean, it's I understand like. So I guess what I'm looking for is someone I like, but it's yeah, I don't it's too complicated. It feels very complex even just talking about it. It's I don't think I don't understand it completely. I mean, not even not even hate, even though there's two sides of the same coin, they both require passion, and you could hate someone and be devoted to them. But is it just wanting to find yourself in other people, or you're looking for yourself.
That's a good question. Like, I don't feel like I'm an expert about this. Like, the only thing that I'm grateful for that has kind of simplified this whole idea, I guess, in my life is just like the first time that uh the first time I met my girlfriend, like I felt like there was not really a connection there. But eventually, like I did feel and understand that there was a connection there and there was like a really strong resonance and I realized that we were what I think of as soul bonded. So that was like just a really clear answer that made things kind of really simple. But I would say, there's probably that for everybody is my guess. The tricky thing, I guess, is, and this is why it's important not to be like Trump enough that you do remain vulnerable and open enough to certain things. I don't think that the trajectory, like there's a good kind of like solid definition of love or like even like good general advice about love. I think that that is a personal experience. I recently saw a video about a flying squirrel. Flying squirrel was like jumped from the tree, and I don't know if I had ever seen a video of a flying squirrel before, but I was really surprised that the flying squirrel doesn't just like glide down, that the flying squirrel is like actually going kind of up and down and around as it's like, doing its gliding. And I've seen that too with birds, where they're not flapping their wings, but they're going up and they're going down, but their wings are perfectly still. And I think that that's like a really good way to think of life is that there are kind of channels of whatever that exist that we don't usually think about. There's certain channels of just like where things are easier. And we probably have all experienced it at one point or another, where it feels like we're swimming with the tide, with the current, where it's like this is so easy, and sometimes it's opposite, where we have that experience where it seems like this is feels harder than it should be, like we're kind of going against the channel for whatever reason. And I think, just like the flying squirrel, these birds, they're really just making like these minute little changes. It's not like this big change, it's not like this big reconception. And this is why I think it's such like a person specific thing that you really need to use your intuition for. They're just kind of like adjusting the slightest way, but in adjusting just the slightest way, they're able to harness the power of this channel, this wind channel, this whatever else, and kind of really leverage like the small change into a big outcome. This is why I kind of think it's, there's rarely things about the world that are actually linear, that are like 1 plus 2, 2 plus 3, et cetera. That's not linear year, I guess, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, where it's just kind of like, yeah, here are the 10 steps in order to get this thing, like even certain
I
things like
do
going
see
to
things a lot like
college.
that.
Yeah, yeah, going to college
Eh,
and getting a good job is not necessarily true anymore. And I think that to the extent we try to simplify things and make it seem like it's linear, that it's just like these 10 easy steps to this, that's probably not true. That it's not going to be just 10 easy steps for everybody. It might be 3 for somebody and it might be 20 for somebody else, and they're not going to be the same steps either. Because you're in a different location than, you're the flying squirrel in this area of the world, in this time and this whatever. So you have different conditions that you're reacting to than anybody else has ever had in order to react to. So that's why it's so individual. Like in order to go up or whatever, what would you have to do? Maybe you'd have to lean a little bit left. Maybe you'd have to lean right. Maybe you'd even have to go down a little bit in order to access that channel that's going to allow you to go up.
You know what I just realized?
Hmm.
We were supposed to talk about panic attack.
Oh, panic attack. Really? I don't even remember that. It's been
You said you said I said it was in the email. You said your girlfriend has experience with it
Oh, yeah,
as
panic
well.
attacks. Okay. Mhm. Yeah.
So I feel like This is we're like a good jazz band right here. We're just
Uh-huh.
lobbing back and forth. We got on the Buddhism and all this music and but I suppose for everyone it's an emotional issue. For me, it was I just thought I was dying,
Mm.
and it was have you ever had one?
No, I haven't, but so I'll describe really quickly, like, what the first one that my girlfriend had when she was a child. I'm not sure, like, maybe like a tween or something. It seemed like it was pre-teenage years, but she was kind of like in like a little bit of a haze, maybe waking up or something. She's like laying on the couch. She's watching a cooking show. They're like dicing something with a knife, dice, dice, dice. And then she just has like this total freak out about the knife. It was like the way it manifested itself was seemed to be largely visual for her for whatever reason, that the knife was being so weird, and then it was as if reality wasn't real anymore. And like a big chasm of panic from this kind of like realization or like, immense existential angst kind of hitting her all at once type situation. So that's the one she experienced as a child. Then she had another one as like a teenager, like during the late teens, I think, during the playground stage. So she's like normally doesn't care, nothing affects her, but then she like ends up in the hospital like on a bunch of Ativan. And it's funny because I talked about this. She's like, you need to remember this. You need to write that down. But I think of like often, like there's so many things going on with us. The personality disorder is just a gloss. It's just like the topsoil layer. And like an archaeologist, once we get under the personality disorder, once we get kind of past it through therapy or whatever else, there's still going to be a bunch of stuff up there. There's dinosaur bones and all sorts of stuff. There's like maybe like an Incan temple under all this, like kind of like just detritus that has built up over like the course of whatever from like the stuff that's allowed us to have a personality disorder and the personality disorder itself. And so we just have to kind of excavate things, and some of the stuff that we're going to end up excavating is going to be like her panic attacks, where it's like she's always experienced these things. This is actually something that's unrelated to the personality disorder, and she just hasn't really been aware of it because she hasn't been aware of the rest of her feelings either as a result of the personality disorder. It'd be like, have you ever heard of this where somebody goes into, it's like, okay, like emergency surgery for whatever this is, like a broken rib or something. And while they're in there, they discover there's something else wrong. That's kind of how I feel like with a lot of these things is that, the symptoms of something else may be overwhelming the symptoms of something new. So she has had to like even get pharmaceutical kind of treatment for this like tendency to have panic attacks. So I think of it, I guess that way. That's how I view it. And then how do you view it?
It's almost when you said how she described it as something what was it something wrong with reality.
Mhm.
That it's almost like a nightmare situation, a nightmare hallucinogenic situation. Um, you don't necessarily see colors or anything, or I didn't. But it is a feeling of a wrongness with reality. And in my case, I thought it was a stroke because my arm felt a little waxy.
Mm,
So, but the ambulance and they showed up and they said there's nothing wrong with you. And then the second time I was like, this my arm is waxy, and then it was almost like a blanket of wrongness on my body, and if I moved, it intensified. And there was vertigo too, and so I went to the hospital. They did a brain scan, MRI. I had to wait 3 days. They said my brain, there was nothing on it. There was no stroke. And so it was actually a self-diagnosed panic attack,
mm,
which if anyone knows, once they identify that they're having a panic attack, it kind of takes the edge off of having panic attacks.
Yes.
And so I was just doing breathing exercises whenever I had to fight it off, but it was one of the it was prob it probably was the most intense experience of my life. That that feeling. No, no, it was the most intense because what other situation is there where you feel like reality itself, the pillars of it are crumbling?
And I actually wonder, at least with like my girlfriend, I actually wonder if like, she obviously was having these as a child, maybe even earlier. Maybe the personality disorder helped her in a way. Maybe that was another reason why she developed this particular personality disorder, is that it did allow her to detach from the feelings and kind of give her this sense of invincibility, which is how she mostly remembers her experience of reality, is like this invincible kind of playground psychopath. And these she was able to kind of write off these panic attacks as like being one-offs or whatever, and kind of be like, oh well, and then compartmentalize it away. Whereas if she had been uh kind of no personality disorder, but also like no real treatment of the panic disorder, which was kind of mostly what would happen, like she would be taken to the hospital maybe or something, but nobody really followed up with any sort of, like regular therapy or if getting a prescription or something, or, education about it. Like that may have killed her, like that may have been too much. And that's the crazy thing about panic attacks, is they're so bad that like I really do think, it's like the paramedics say there's nothing wrong with you, but actually like it could kill you because it feels like it is mentally, it can mentally kill you, I guess.
It's you see, with me, m- you're probably right, but I view it as more of a physical brain hiccup more than something psychologically. Um, it might as well, in my case, I feel might as well have been a stroke, except, stroke is obviously worse, but I don't, yeah, the psychological implications of it don't really, I don't really, I don't didn't really linger on that. I just figured it was my brain
Yeah.
being kooky
Uh-huh.
and dumping the wrong chemicals at the wrong time, or but it was I wish I had something cooler, like I was watching, Knives or something. I was just at the sink. I was at the sink washing a plate after I ate what was it with just nonsense mac and cheese. I had mac and cheese and I felt it at the sink and I had to lie down, and it was mac and cheese that did it.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
pillars of reality started to crumble because of mac and cheese.
Yeah, and who
Those
knows,
bastards
like
at Kraft.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know anything else other than that, but yeah, I think that sometimes people assume like the thing that I thought was interesting, and because you share this with my girlfriend, is that like there is a comorbidity often to things. People sometimes assume that if you have a low startle response, for instance, that you wouldn't ever experience anxiety or have a panic attack, and that's not true. Like there are plenty of people with super low, resting heart rate, super low startle responses, super low. Like my girlfriend is not a fearful person, but she can be anxious and she can experience panic attacks. So it's interesting to kind of understand that distinction.
Or you can almost have this primitive, you're in the zone. Um yeah, you're in the zone, things are heightened. You're not relaxed, but you're in the zone. You're in the zone, and I'm familiar with that. Um As for anxiety, after, I think, yeah, um, only because things are shaky afterward, because you've had this system shock, and like even now, I haven't had one in a while, like almost 2 years, and but I'll be watching TV and there'll be like this flutter of it. And then I'll remember that, okay, I have the Xanax nearby. Maybe I'll take that.
Mhm.
It sort of is in the background occasionally, but it's very low, but I'm aware of it. And that's the generator of any anxiety is just that momentary, oh, is it coming back? And it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I my understanding of this and, like, I don't know, I don't wanna misrepresent her, is that sometimes you can start fearing, like, the onset of another panic attack the same way that you might fear the onset of boredom, is how she kind of experiences it, and that can contribute to even more anxiety, is that you fear the panic attack, and so you're anxious about it, and that same with boredom
Panicking over
is
the panic attack.
yeah, exactly, is that you can get, like, riled up, like, the boredom's really painful to experience, but also you can experience pain even just in the anticipation of the boredom.
Do you have any quick hacks for alleviating boredom?
I mean, I don't have any quick hacks. I'm like a gardener about that. I really am kind of like you have to be so vigilant. And I think that's the thing that is sometimes hard to hear, especially if if you really love the playground stage of being a psychopath. It can be hard to hear that that you'd have to be, like, vigilant and, like, every day. Like, I have when I wake up, I have, like, 4 or 5 different reminders of things, including meditation, including some other things that just help me to feel like I have become centered. And the more centered I feel before I start doing things, the more they tend to feel like self-expression to me. And it's like this everyday practice. It's not like, it's kinda like music, It's like you can't just kind of be a great whatever jazz musician, let's say, or something. You have to you have to put in the work every day. You have to put in the work. You have to warm up. You have to There are just certain things that you have to do to feel like you're performing because performing your best. It's the same thing like reading about LeBron James or whatever. I read that he like sleeps like 14 hours a day. Like you have to be willing to kind of put into practice these things that you end up learning are how you feel best, interacting with the world, engaging with the world. And it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be like 20 to 30 different things. Like summer's going to be different than winter. Fall's going to be different from spring. And it's a tricky thing, and the boredom still can come, but then you have to kind of, again, like I say with the anthropologist and like this feedback loop, you have to identify, hey, why did the boredom come in this particular instance? It's interesting because, there is like an age difference between me and my girlfriend, and I
Good for
would
you.
say, yeah, 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 and she started going to therapy like probably like I don't know, many years after I started going. So in some ways, I think of her as just being like a few years behind, kind of doing the same thing that I did like a few years ago. Uh, and you, and she's dealing with different stuff too. Like she has anxiety. I didn't have anxiety. But sometimes I can see the symptoms, like the cracks start to show where I think, okay, you're not doing the things that you know you should be doing. And or they need to be tweaked. You need to come up with, like, a better system for doing this particular thing because little things will start to bother her. For instance, like, a symptom of this is she starts to drive aggressively, starts to get so angry at people while she's driving, starts getting, like, more, like, road ragey about stuff. That usually is a sign to me that she's, like, white knuckling things. And if you're white knuckling something, if something feels like it's not sustainable anymore, there's like a problem like that. That's going to keep getting worse. You're going to keep feeling worse about it. So I guess thinking about that, we talk so much nowadays about sustainability, but we have to think about sustainability within our own selves. You know, what's sustainable for me is different than what's sustainable for you, is different than what's sustainable for LeBron James. And we're always just trying to maximize that sustainability, but it comes from not usually like just like a magic cure drug or something, or just as long as I take a bath every night or something, I'm okay. It has to be the bath plus 20 other things that I'm doing regularly.
Now, my tricky situation is that while I see a psychologist or psychiatrist, whichever gives you the medicine
Mhm.
for the medication, um there is compulsion to want to talk, but I don't know if I want to go. He doesn't know. So, and the trickiest question anyone ever asks me is, and he does it all the time. It's understandable. How do you feel?
Yeah.
I never know how to answer that. Fuck, excuse me. That you too. I don't want you to get demonetized. How do you answer that question when, like, what does that even mean? I
I
mean,
know.
what, can you be more specific? Maybe then I can answer it. Because if you, how do I feel? I'm annoyed that you asked me how do I feel because I don't feel anything, at least not right now. Except
Mhm.
maybe annoyed that you just asked me how I feel. I don't know how I feel. The answer to that question my entire life because I was a very affectless affectless child was I guess people want to know how I'm doing, so how you feeling? Fine is always the answer from an early
Mhm.
age. Just fine. There, I don't, I'm just, I don't understand. Do people just walk around feeling stuff all the time? Really? Really? Really?
I think they might. I think they
Like, how do you
do.
even, how do you function? And, so I think maybe just as another way to amuse myself, just, some stranger, how you feeling? My mother just shot herself. She shot herself in the face and just walk away stunned.
Mhm. Yeah.
It, it it's the most annoying question in the world. How do you feel? And what can you say? You can't be authentic because you'll freak someone out.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, your doctor probably is asking for your authentic reaction.
But do I want that?
I know,
Do I
that's
want
really
that?
tricky. If, and who I think I've mentioned this before, but Ariel Baskin Summers wrote an article, now it's like April 2022, maybe is when it came out, where she says there's a stigma against certain mental health disorders, even amongst psychologists and psychiatrists. And so if you need that doctor in order to get the Xanax that you also need, I would be like maybe hesitant. But go ahead and ask intuition is probably the best advice. But I can see why you might be hesitant, to be honest,
Yeah,
with him or her.
I see. This, I already know my decision. I'm not gonna say anything. Um, I get more out of like this than I get talking because I don't believe anything that he's gonna tell me is gonna apply because I don't have. He's looking for components that just aren't in the machinery,
Yeah.
it seems.
You have like a different physiology than what he's expecting.
Right, and he's a nice guy, West African, and has an accent, and I'm the only one of his patients who could pronounce his name. I won't
Hmm.
say it, but I'm
Uh-huh.
the only one of his. Apparently, I'm the smartest one, because I impressed the hell out of him by saying his name. Everyone else has to abbreviate it because they can't enunciate because they're chicken people.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, this right here is if there was more of a community like this, more so there could be more authenticity and of expression of thought, but I don't want to find it in a supermax or a psych ward.
Yeah,
So this is good, very good.
good. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and maybe now is like a good place to kind of like wrap it up, and we can come
Yeah, it feels
back.
like a natural conclusion.
Yeah, another time. But I really appreciate you. I appreciate your honesty. I know that there are others out there that have had similar experiences that will be able to relate. And in the same small way, I guess that you can sense like an opportunity for authenticity, greater authenticity. I hope that's what's happened, and I hope that they, in listening to you, can also experience that additional authenticity too, until we all become as authentic as Donald Trump.
Without the politics,
Yeah,
sure. Um,
without the other personality disorder that he
yeah.
probably has, but
This is just you don't have to do it here. I don't know when or maybe we could do this after quickly post interview or whatever.
yeah, do you want to stop
Um,
recording?
okay, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.